Randolph across the timeline, takes a three at the horn. He nailed it!
Anthony Erwin Randolph Jr., born July 15th, 1989. Back in 2007, Anthony Randolph's hype was up there with all the hyped young prospects in the nation. Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Love, OJ Mayo, Mike Beasley. The 2007 class definitely had something special, and in hindsight did produce 2 league MVPs and multiple NBA All-Stars. Anthony Randolph was the question mark of that class, mainly because it was difficult to project the one-of-a-kind talent he had, as either it usually goes great and the prospect pans out, or it's a bust and everyone was wrong in the end. There was no in-between with Anthony Randolph. He was either going to revolutionize the power forward center position with his motor first of all, which allowed him to rebound the ball, and in the next motion dribble sprint up the floor, leading the fast break, or quick outlet using that same motor and guard-like strides to beat his defender who was still lumbering up the floor. His size, which was the most glaring question mark as an amateur in an era where size still mattered as a big, also presented the reality that this could be great in that he's wiry and elusive enough to confuse his defender and quick enough on his feet to defend when switching to smaller positions. Or he proves to be too weak and too soft to make those advantages. With his poker face demeanor, it was hard to tell whether or not to bet on this highly talented lefty with a huge motor and ability to move unlike his position at the time, but question mark nonetheless. With the final pick in the 2008 lottery, the Golden State Warriors selected the one-and-done project, hoping he turned out to be a young pillar to their future and one day develop into a franchise game-changing talent in the front court. Little they knew that generational talent would actually come a year later in Wardell Stephon Curry. Some argue that Randolph's most important skill for the Warriors was him not becoming what many thought he'd be, which made the Warriors continue rebuilding and getting guys like Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, the real pieces to the franchise's future dynasty. That doesn't happen if Anthony Randolph becomes productive enough in a timelier manner. Things happened fast for Anthony Randolph. Problem is, they never slowed down once he got to the NBA, and he found himself traded sooner than expected as a first-round lottery pick, playing for 4 teams in just 6 years in the NBA. At 19, he was a game-changing unicorn. At 24, he was out the league for good. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Bandit.Sneed on IG for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Anthony Randolph was a 6'10" power forward center born in West Germany due to his parents both being in the military. He moved around a lot as a child, from school in California to Arkansas, before landing in Dallas, Texas prior to his junior season, where he became a 5-star recruit and ranked as high as 12th in the country. As mentioned, 2007 was a very competitive class, with multiple prospects considered one and done on the college level once they got there. Anthony Randolph was seen as possibly one of them. Even though he was at least a top 15 guy, averaged 25 and 12 as a senior, and ranked higher than Blake Griffin, Jared Bayless, Johnny Flynn, and on some boards higher than James Harden, he was not selected as a McDonald's All-American. He'd choose LSU to attend college for a chance to play right away. Stunt number 1, he wasn't ready. Now, I'm not one to always harp on this growth stunt, but it seems to be the common denominator in the equation lately of stunted growth features who simply should have stayed another year in college. But is it so simple? This reason is always the most difficult for me because of how torn I am about the entire rule and process. On one hand, how do you tell or advise a guy not to take finally reaching the goal and millions of dollars to play a game you've been playing since 6, 7, 8 years old? Every basketball player, when they first pick up a basketball seriously, aims to one day make it to the NBA. With complete focus, we all envision one day getting to that level. For a prospect to be right at the door, with people on the inside saying, hey, we think you're ready to come in, and even better, we'll take you as high as top 14, meaning more money of course, but more importantly, you will be a focus investment instead of a prayer in the sky late in the first round or draft. For a player to be confident enough to be honest with himself and admit to himself that he's not ready is nearly impossible, although I've seen it happen before with a guy like Rashard McCants. He could have left after his sophomore year and be a first-round pick, but wanted to improve his stock and came back for his junior year. But that was the mid-2000s, very different than it would later become, beginning with Anthony Randolph's class. 2008 was the first year, in my opinion, one-and-dones became the popular thing. Because of the excitement to see those players from that class in the NBA, there was an almost encouragement for them to all spend only a year in college, and I believe Anthony Randolph followed suit. Not only that, but he played well enough to have the stats that say he should leave. But what he didn't have were the skills to match his natural motor and guard-like fluidity. He didn't have a back-to-the-basket move to speak of, stretch jump shot not quite there at 10% from 3 on the season, and he also averaged 3 turnovers a game despite being a big man. LSU won just 13 games that year, much because Anthony Randolph wasn't the player who could put the team on his back. Either way, he decided to enter the draft and learned the hard way, not allowing himself to develop more. Big men and back to the basket was still a thing back then, and Anthony Randolph wasn't physically ready to compete. Stunt number 2, severe ankle injury. Even though the Warriors were starting to realize they were wrong about Anthony Randolph, he was still beginning to play well enough in his second season. He was just coming off exploding in Summer League for 42 points and being invited to train with Team USA. He was highly expected to not just take the jump and be productive his second year, but show signs he was their man for the franchise role in case it was time to move on from the Steven Jacksons, Jamal Crawford, Al Harrington, Corey Maggette, and the rest of the older guard in Golden State that were exciting but just not getting it done. He and Monte Ellis were seen as very important pieces to the future. Another piece added prior to his second season was Steph Curry. Sharp-shooting, hyped prospect coming off one of the most memorable college careers, where pros constantly showed up to his game to watch him be doubled and triple-teamed and still score 30 points. None of that mattered early on, as Steph was just one of the guys. Monte Ellis was actually in position to make his argument for franchise captain before Steph. Anthony Randolph was right there as well. He just needed a strong second year, and then boom, after 33 games, goes down January 8, 2010 in a game against the Kings with 2 torn ligaments on the outside of his ankle and an avulsion fracture where the inside ligament pulled away from the bone. Little that anyone knew, it was the final game of his Warrior career, ruled out the rest of the 09-10 season. Then the team traded him, giving up on him after just 90 total games, not even a full 2 seasons, and no chance to show the ankle could recover. Stunt number 3, not the same guy. Lastly, Anthony Randolph was simply not the same guy after the injury as he was before it, physically nor mentally. Not to mention, he kept ending up on teams that didn't have the space for him to grow, or his style didn't match. In Golden State, they were still promoting Steven Jackson and guys like Jamal Crawford and Monte Ellis, who either slowed the offense down or had to have the ball in their hands often to be successful, leaving less opportunity for Randolph. Then he goes to the Knicks, who are stacked and 2 are focused on older guys in Randolph's position, like Melo, Stoudemire, Turioff, and guys like Chandler and Gallinari. The Knicks traded him after just 17 games before he moved on to Minnesota and Denver for 2 seasons apiece. Traded so often, you develop a stigma around the league, as if there must be a problem with you if none of the teams wanted to keep you. There's also a confidence hit as well when you start to hear those comments of you being a bust more than often. You begin getting less opportunity, and eventually you aren't the same confident player with all the potential you once was. Mentally and physically, you settle on survival instead of being what you initially aspire to. He was no longer as fast, quick, and elusive compared to bigs, and he didn't develop much since being hurt that teams started to pass. He left the NBA and headed overseas, playing 7 years for Real Madrid, where he seemed to be at home. All in all, Anthony Randolph was talented enough to be the guy, but decisions and circumstances hindered his growth. He found a home with Real Madrid and was happy overseas, where he fits in much better on that level, especially after his injury. Was he a bust? Yes, but it was out of his control for the most part for the reasons above. He retired summer 2023 from basketball at 33 years old, still young enough to chase other dreams. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.